All right, so I have two articles for you tonight. The first one is PragerU's plan to red pill our kids. For those of you who don't know, PragerU is this ultra right wing think tank, I guess you could call them. And they spread so much misinformation and disinformation because they want the world to fit their worldview as opposed to it fitting reality. So that's the first article. The second one, which I just saw, and this one's from NBC News, is U.S. citizen with real ID handcuffed and held in immigration raid before being released. So that's not great. That's not a good look at all, but then again, there is nothing about the way this administration is handling immigration that is a good look. But let us start with The Hollywood Reporter and talking about PragerU. Dennis Prager's right-leaning media platform has built an audience of millions by marrying slick Hollywood production values with mega stars and conservative ideology. Now it's saying its sights on a new market, America's schoolchildren. When Dennis Prager enters the small conference room at his radio station in Los Angeles, he seems to fill up the entire space. He's 6'4" and has a deep, commanding voice that has gained him millions of listeners, even as it retains a slight old-world Brooklyn accent. It's early fall, and he's wearing a blue striped shirt, a blue tie, and dark slacks. He chooses to sit at the head of the table, in front of a glass display case containing awards. This would end up being one of his last interviews before an injury would leave him hospitalized for months, just as his media empire has become more influential than ever and ready to shape the minds of a new generation of potential Republican voters. Prager, 76, has just finished taping an episode of the nationally syndicated Dennis Prager Show, which reportedly has more than 2 million listeners. This day's episode covered the killing of Hezbollah's Hassan Nasrallah and Minnesota's ethnic studies standards under Governor Tim Walz. Well, that's quite a dichotomy. The show is part of Salem Media Group, which owns 95 radio stations and broadcasts Christian and conservative content. Prager has been with Salem since about 2000, after having started on KABC in Los Angeles in the 1980s. The show's tagline, "When Dennis Prager speaks, America listens." Prager seems full of contradictions. He's a Jewish person in Christian radio, a conservative in progressive California, a New Yorker on the West Coast, and a person who seems surprisingly cheerful despite his outrage on air. In a typical episode, he rails against topics like legacy media, campus protesters, and of course, Democrats. But off-air, he's happy to talk about classical music and his fountain pen collection. "I don't collect old ones, I only buy new ones," he says, lighting up. He removes 2 from a pocket and places them on the conference table. "This one is made in Japan, and this one is made in Germany. Our 2 enemies in World War II make the best stuff." Though Prager is widely known for radio, younger conservatives and the conservative curious might instead know him as a co-founder of PragerU, originally called Prager University. The tax-exempt media organization specializes in 5-minute video promoting Judeo-Christian values, as fundraising materials put it. Its clips have amassed nearly 10 billion views, according to the organization. Key to that success has been high-profile video hosts, aggressive marketing, and enlisting Hollywood production talent who, according to PragerU's leadership, are fed up with the industry's wokeness. I would love to know what exactly is woke about Hollywood. I really want them to say out loud that they are bigoted fucks. I really want them to say that out loud. Because most people are embarrassed to admit that they are bigoted fucks. Not everybody, some are proud to be that, but most are embarrassed. PragerU has long been controversial, drawing reprimands over the years from the Southern Poverty Law Center, GLAAD, the Council on American Islamic Relations, and the Human Rights Campaign. Some critics, like Kansas State University researcher Adrienne McCarthy, argue that the organization serves as a gateway to far-right extremism through the values it promotes. Yet the organization has only continued to grow, most recently through kids' content becoming available to public schoolers in a rapidly growing list of red states. I only knew about Florida. I didn't know that it was in other states, but I guess doesn't surprise me. In PragerU's view, the kids' content teaches patriotism and other values that the left has ignored while obsessing over DEI and gender identity. The only people obsessing over that are the very people who are accusing the Democrats of obsessing over it. Just because we understand that these things exist doesn't mean we're obsessing over it. Just because we think people should have rights doesn't mean we're obsessing. It just means we think that humans should be treated like humans. The organization also believes that parents share its concerns about the state of America's classrooms. There's an appetite for what we're doing, says Marissa Streit, PragerU's chief executive officer. There is a great awakening for parents and grandparents where they're realizing that their children are robbed of proper education. That depends on what you consider proper education. Explaining that slavery was a thing is proper education. Explaining that the Tuskegee Airmen existed is proper education. Explaining the Underground Railroad and that it was run by mostly escaped slaves. I mean, yeah, there were white people involved too. It's not like it was just escaped slaves, but to make it seem like escaped slaves were just in the background would be stupid. So, what proper education are they not getting? Oh, that's right. They tell you that racism existed and probably show pictures that might accidentally show that their parents were racist fucks, and that the LGBT plus community exists, because obviously we don't want them to exist. But to opponents, the videos are offensive in how they present everything from slavery to climate change to Black Lives Matter. I can't give you specifics, but I've seen some of their content, and it is horrible. Beth Lewis of Save Our Schools, Arizona, argues that teaming up with states gives PragerU a veneer of accreditation and credibility, when it is really a well-funded, billionaire-backed scheme that sells dangerous disinformation to our students who might not have tools to discern fact from fiction. There are plenty of adults who don't have that. Proof? Look who's president. PragerU's donors have included groups tied to the Wilkes brothers, who are fracking billionaires, for example. And she mentioned one video in particular about Christopher Columbus that seems to be saying slavery is no big deal. PragerU has responded to such claims on its website, saying, PragerU never minimizes the evils of slavery. Our critics choose to either ignore or lie about PragerU's condemnation of slavery as an awful part of American history in these cartoons and many other pieces of content. Like I said, all you have to do is watch the damn things. I mean, yeah, they do say horrible shit. And no, Christopher Columbus wouldn't think that slavery is a big deal because he wasn't the slave. So, yeah, he's living in an era where slavery was perfectly fine. So, yeah, of course Christopher Columbus wouldn't have a problem with slavery. I mean, he's a product of his time. Now that Republicans control the White House, Congress and the majority of state legislatures and public education is in their crosshairs. PragerU seems ready to expand its influence even further. If it fits comfortably in this current conservative movement to address what's taught in classrooms through legislation, parents' rights groups, and most recently, moving to shutter the U.S. Department of Education. PragerU isn't backing down. They call us all kinds of names, Straight says. It's so mind-boggling to me. Let me see. What names do you think you should be called when, you spread misinformation in the guise of teaching history simply because the way history goes is counter to what you want the world to be? Anyway, PragerU content is a lot about doom and gloom, like the urgent need to save Western civilization due to drag queen story hours and illegal immigration. I never understood why people were losing their shit over drag queen story hour. Seriously, what is it about drag queens that freaks people out? Are there drag queens that do adult content? Yes, they do it for adults. When they're doing Drag Queen Story Hour, they are not doing adult content. I do not know why this is so hard for people. And illegal immigration, a lot of the immigrants are coming from South America, Central America, right? That is the West. I'm not sure what the problem is here. All right, but the mood at the organization's headquarters is lighter. During a recent visit to the offices in Los Angeles, the belly of the beast, Street says, or Straight, whatever, likes to say, the CEO is wearing a pink blazer with a white top and blue jeans. Her office is bright and spacious, with light hardwood floors, velvety chairs, and a conference table. There's also a massive closet, a full-length mirror, and a desk with a camera set up near it. A critic once referred to Strite as white Christian nationalist Barbie, a remark Strite reposted on Instagram, pointing out to her followers, she now has more than 100,000 and PragerU has more than 2 million, that she is Jewish and her mother is from Morocco. Okay, and if you're spouting white Christian nationalist bullshit, what does it matter what you look like? Okay, you're Jewish. Your boss is Jewish. If you're posting and pushing a white Christian nationalist narrative, what does it matter that you happen to not be white or that you happen to be Jewish? I mean, I just don't see how that negates anything. This is like the bigot claiming that he can't be racist because his best friend is black. No, that's not how racism works. That's not how any of this works. You can push a narrative even though it would ultimately come to bite you in the ass, simply because you feel that you are somehow the chosen one. You know that all these other people who are like me, who look like me and are Jewish, they're the bad ones. They're the ones we should fight against, but I'm one of the good ones. Basically a pick me. PragerU has Hollywood roots. The idea came from Alan Estrin, Dennis Prager's radio producer and a screenwriter who has taught at the American Film Institute. The men were on an Indian Ocean cruise around 2009 with listeners of Prager's show when two friends approached Estrin about starting a Prager University, suggesting that they do something along the lines of Hillsdale. Estrin recalled in a 2019 Fireside Chat PragerU video. Hillsdale is a Christian college in Michigan that forgoes federal funding to avoid anti-discrimination regulations. At least they're following the law. The law says that if you're a public institution, you have to follow discrimination laws. So regardless of what you think of the separation of church and state, but for those people who are whining about how there shouldn't be a separation, this is why there's a separation. Because religious institutions can do shit like this. They can discriminate to their little heart's content. The minute they become public, they won't be able to do that. Unless the Supreme Court says discrimination is not a thing and, allows people to discriminate to their little heart's content. In which case, then it's not going to matter if it's public or private. Estrin crunched the numbers and decided it would take too much time and effort, but he liked the idea of doing something educational. So he pitched Prager during the cruise, let's create something on the internet. Estrin and Prager soon got to work shooting 5-minute internet videos, a form then still in its early days. YouTube launched in 2005. Making videos wasn't entirely new to them. In 1993, the duo made a 29-minute comedy short, For Goodness Sake, made up of vignettes focused on virtue. Airplane's David Zucker directed, and the cast included Jason Alexander, Bonnie Hunt, Florence Henderson, Bob Saget, Cindy Williams, and Eugene Levy. Zucker also put up money for the project, which they intended to be a series pilot. It eventually aired on Los Angeles Public Television and was sold as a training video for corporations and schools. For a 1996 sequel, they enlisted Trey Parker as director and Matt Stone as first assistant director, a year before the debut of South Park. That is so weird that they would be involved in something Dennis Prager is doing. I mean, there's nothing about South Park that screams PragerU. Even as they focused on videos, the name Prager University stuck. An early version of the website listed video titles as if a course catalog, economics, history, philosophy, political science, and religion. The site had an option to enroll and a faculty section. Some states require that an entity be formally approved as a university to call itself one. Recall the scrutiny Trump University faced. By 2014, a disclaimer on the site noted it wasn't actually an accredited academic institution, though it remained a nonprofit. In 2011, Prager and Estrin brought on Stride, whom they met through a family she had once tutored in Hebrew. The team still felt Prager University wasn't reaching enough viewers. We were violating a basic Hollywood rule, Estrin said in a 2021 documentary shot by the Daily Wire. You need to spend as much on marketing as you do on production. So they revamped the website. In 2015, they rebranded as PragerU and began thinking of themselves as not just an educational entity, but also a media company. Videos became more clicky and provocative with titles like Why I Left Greenpeace and What They Haven't Told You About Climate Change. They brought in younger talent too, including Charlie Kirk, the founder of conservative student group Turning Point USA. The rebrand worked. A 2015 video on the virtues of the Electoral College, which at that time greatly favored Republicans, went viral, eventually earning more than 66 million views. Themes started to emerge in PragerU content. Police and capitalism were good. Socialism and political correctness bad. The effects of climate change were debatable, and gender dysphoria went against biology. Yeah, I wouldn't expect a bunch of Christian yahoos to understand what biology is. And I just want to make sure people understand. I do not think all Christians are yahoos. I'm talking about the conservative Christians, the right-wingers who seem to think that their idea of Christianity is the only version of Christianity that exists, even though there are hundreds of denominations. So, yeah, those are the people I'm referring to as yahoos. There are plenty of Christians who think trans people exist. Around the time of the 2016 election, PragerU was far from the only expanding right-wing media company. Even in Los Angeles, where the Breitbart News Network, then run by Steve Bannon, and Ben Shapiro's The Daily Wire also were based. But while other sites focused on the MAGA talking points du jour, think Hillary Clinton's emails, PragerU didn't hitch its wagon to Trump, barely mentioning him during his first administration. For one, as a 501c3, PragerU legally must stay away from political activity. And Prager himself had in 2011 called Trump unfit to be a presidential candidate, let alone president. Like that's ever stopped anyone. His current vice president called him America's Hitler. Though he subsequently wrote in 2016 that voting for Trump over Clinton was political chemotherapy needed to prevent our demise. Anthony Curtis, who worked there as a director of major gifts from 2020 and 2021, explains the leadership's thinking as, listen guys, we're not here to engage in the daily controversy. We have to maintain our credibility. Still, plenty of political pundits and Trump backers appeared in PragerU videos. These presenters included Kirk, Shapiro, Candace Owens, and Tucker Carlson. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas did a video on courage. Nikki Haley and Vivek Ramaswamy appear in multiple videos, as did Pete Hegseth, now the Secretary of Defense, and Tulsi Gabbard, now the Director of National Intelligence. From the entertainment world, the list includes the usual who's who's of Hollywood's small contingent of outspoken right-wingers, like Zucker, Kirk Cameron, Samir Armstrong? I'm not sure. And Kevin Sorbo. What, no Scott Baio? Rob Schneider sat for an interview about how comedy can help save the West. And Adam Carolla and Drew Pinsky made appearances too. Now, I have to agree with Rob Schneider on this one because the late night talk shows are doing just fine. They're doing great in helping people understand that obviously they're not doing a good enough job because Trump got elected again, but hopefully the tide is turning. Such personalities are crucial to PragerU's success, says John Knefel of Media Matters for America, a left-leaning watchdog group. In PragerU clips, the personalities are not as overtly frothing as they might be in their own platforms, he says. What is being presented is right-wing propaganda that has this veneer of ideological neutrality, but in fact, it's acting as a gateway to enter into these other mega fever swamps. Funding for these star-studded videos came from groups associated with wealthy Republican megadonors, including Dan and Ferris Wilks, Sheldon Adelson, Lee Roy Mitchell, Bernard Marcus, and Betsy DeVos. PragerU's most recent publicly available tax filing for fiscal year 2023 listed more than $68 million in revenue, double the amount from just 3 years earlier. PragerU hit 1 billion video views in 2017. It took less than 4 more years to get to 5 billion in 2021. PragerU decided it was time to expand its audience. All right. Streit was born in Los Angeles and moved to Israel when she was young. She served in the Israel Defense Forces and later was director of operations at the Israeli American Council, a nonprofit that supports Israeli Americans. She says she also taught at and ran a private Jewish K-8 school and has a master's in education. She initially worked for PragerU out of her kitchen. Now the operation consists of about 150 people across 2 floors in LA, with offices for marketing and social media and 6 production studios that turn out upward of 40 pieces of new content each week. Wherever you look, there are American flags and depictions of Abraham Lincoln, Dennis Prager, and the Founding Fathers. PragerU also has a smaller office in Florida. I don't think the Founding Fathers or Abraham Lincoln would appreciate PragerU, so there is that. The Los Angeles home base has enabled PragerU to recruit from the entertainment industry, which could be why its sleek videos look more like Netflix than the Cato Institute. We get to hire the people that Hollywood repulses, Streit says. If you're a white male in Hollywood, you're actually told that you should shut up and not talk until everybody else that wins victim bingo speaks ahead of you. Right, but you're not a white nationalist Barbie. What the frick? Oh my God. PragerU attracts people who can't leave California but don't want to be beaten up like that every single day at work, she says. They're not being beaten up at work every day for what they say, because that is literally not what's happening. If they're being beaten up, it's because they're horrible people. It's not because they happen to be white males. It's because they suck. And possibly questionable talent, but that's a different story. All right, where was I? That's not to say the organization is only white men, she adds. There are a lot of people of color who don't want to be in those environments. PragerU host Xavier DeRousseau, whom the New York Times recently profiled as a conservative star, and Amelia Ekpunobi, who left PragerU in 2023, are black. I really wonder why Amelia left. I really want to know. Did she finally realize that they actually hate people like her and that they're only using her as a token? I really would love to know that. Armed with production talent and seed funding from venture capitalist David Bloomberg, not that Bloomberg, it's spelled B-L-U, whom Business Insider once profiled under the headline, "He's gay, believes in God, and voted for Donald Trump." I just love this virtue signaling, this idea that, we minorities like us, so we can't be all bad. Even though these minorities are, if he didn't have beliefs that you liked, you would kick him to the curb. He's only there so you can boost up your credibility. He's not there because you actually like him. PragerU Kids launched in 2021. They are now about a dozen shows for 3 age categories. Otto's Tales for kindergarten through second graders is a storytime show in which host Jill Simonin, oh my god, I can't move my mouth. Simonian reads books about American monuments, holidays, and community helpers. Okay. Over an animated version of the story. Unboxed USA for 3rd to 5th graders teaches about state history by having kids open boxes and guess the state based on what's inside. For 6th grade and up, How To purports to teach life skills like managing money. PragerU's critics argue that even such seemingly nonpartisan content has a conservative bent. Media Matters has argued that the financial literacy series Cash Course mocks taking on student debt to attend a big deal drama school, which it links to Republican attacks on higher education. So, what are you supposed to do? I mean, if you can't afford college, are you saying that they just shouldn't go to school? I'm not sure what that video is trying to impart. It's very hard when you haven't seen the video yourself. PragerU had long tried to connect with educators, but now the country has changed. A 2022 Pew Research Center survey found that the majority of Republicans said K-12 schools were having a negative effect on the country, while the majority of Democrats said the opposite. In spring 2023, New York Magazine counted 71 Republican school bills in 28 states. One of the things that unifies all these things is a very powerful narrative that public schools in America have been taken over by some sort of radical leftist ideology, says Adam Lotz, professor of education and history at Binghamton University. The facts of the matter are that's just not true. So when PragerU started courting state education officials for partnerships, those officials likely saw it as a win-win. It's low-hanging fruit for an ambitious superintendent in a conservative area to say, hey, look, we have put this on the approved list, Lotz said. It might look like it has a big impact, even if it has not measurably and probably not very significant impact. The shows were already available for free on PragerU's website, but to PragerU, state approval meant teachers could not be punished for using the content, and it could be made easier for teachers to access the resources through official educational portals that they use for things like lesson planning and grading. The first state to announce a deal was Florida. Then at the center of the curriculum culture wars due to its 2022 Don't Say Gay law and the May 2023 expansion of that law. Drum roll, PragerU Kids is now an approved curriculum in Florida schools. PragerU's Simonian said in a live broadcast in July 2023. Next came Oklahoma. Oh my God, Forrest Belkai must be rolling in his hair. Oh my Lord. I feel sorry for him to try to be a science educator in Oklahoma where PragerU is considered perfectly fine. Followed quickly by New Hampshire? Okay, that's a plot twist. Which brought PragerU Kids to a new level by enabling students who took the organization's financial literacy module to get school credit through an existing state program called Learn Everywhere. New Hampshire's Education Commissioner, Frank Edelblut, tells THR, which is the Hollywood Reporter, he's aware of the opposition. If the students are learning, we don't care where they learn. We just care that they learn, he says. More states followed. Idaho, South Carolina, Louisiana, Arizona, Montana, and Texas. Oklahoma Superintendent of Public Instruction Ryan Walters said in that state's announcement that he has used PragerU materials as a history teacher. You're actually telling history the way it was, Walters said. The left for so long has controlled the narrative. What fucking narrative? What has the left controlled about history? That it happened? Seriously, what is it about history? What do you think that the myth of the happy slave was a thing? And because we know that that's a bunch of bullshit, that somehow we're being big old meanies for opposing other viewpoints? I don't understand. What the hell? And to that education commissioner in New Hampshire, we don't care where they learn, just that they learn. The problem with that is they will seek out other PragerU materials which are problematic and think that they're just the same quality as the ones that they showed. So, yeah, that is problematic. The scope of the partnerships varies. New Hampshire makes credit available, while Arizona links PragerU content on the state education website. The Texas arrangement is less clear. PragerU announced it was now in Texas and on the approved vendor list. A Texas education agency spokesperson said in a statement, PragerU has not been approved by either the Texas State Board of Education, SBOE, or the Texas Education Agency, TEA, as an instructional materials provider. Texas is the reasonable one? We really are living in the Twilight Zone. Tom Horn, the Arizona superintendent and a Republican former state attorney general, tells THR he encountered some opposition even in his family. My youngest daughter's very liberal, he said. She wrote me, "How can you put up Prager videos? They're for slavery." So I sent her about 10 of their videos that were historical videos, completely objective. There was no ideology in them at all, and I never heard another complaint from her. While teachers don't have to use the videos, he says, I would certainly encourage it. A politically left-leaning high school teacher in Deep Red, South Carolina, Clifford Lee, learned about the PragerU partnership from the South Carolina Education Association, where he has been a board member. He wrote to the superintendent and his state legislatures to voice opposition. He believes the material can't be trusted and that the content should teach students to think, not do the thinking for them. They hijack my legitimacy. They hijack my relationships that I've had with my students, he says. He never heard back from the legislatures or the superintendent. He says, so he took it upon himself to urge coworkers not to use the videos. The stakes are too high to let this go unchallenged, he says. Lee isn't the only one pushing back. Americans United for Separation of Church and State launched a probe into the Florida and Oklahoma partnerships in New Hampshire. Cindy Warmington, who was on the state's executive council and ran unsuccessfully in 2024 in the Democratic primary for governor, asked the state attorney general to look into whether PragerU broke the law by calling itself a university, as the AG said it did not. In Louisiana, lawmakers introduced a resolution urging the state to bar edutainment children's videos that are discriminatory and anti-Semitic, citing PragerU. The proposed resolution died. This just goes to show that you can't assume a person's beliefs just based on their in-group. Prager is Jewish, this strike is Jewish, yet they're pushing anti-Semitic tropes. And I've mentioned this in my videos before. You can be black and be racist towards blacks. You can be Jewish, and be anti-Semitic. Just because you are of a certain part of a certain group doesn't mean you don't have self-hatred. It just means that you were born part of that group. Anyway. Oh, and about that former Republican state attorney general, who claims that he sent videos to his daughter and never heard back, as if he's claiming a win. Now, assuming this story actually happened, there could be a couple reasons. One, maybe the videos he sent her were enough to get her to change her mind. Or she just was like, what the fuck, I'm not watching these videos, and just decided not to have a conversation with him anymore. That's also a possibility. So we don't know. Just, he's taking this as a win, but that doesn't mean it actually was. What I'd like to know is, does she contact him ever after that? That is a better question. Opponents argue that rather than teach facts, PragerU videos illustrate already drawn conclusions to spread a problematic agenda. It's simply propaganda, says Kevin Cruz, a Princeton professor of history and director of undergraduate studies. PragerU starts with certain conclusions it has and works backward through history to try to cherry-pick evidence that supports this, he says. It's bad faith motivation doing bad history to draw bad conclusions. Kneffel of Media Matters and colleagues watched every PragerU Kids video and released a September 2023 report. Some of the clips they found most troubling came from the animated show Leo and Layla's History Adventures for elementary schoolers, in which siblings time traveled to meet historical figures. In one, they highlighted a cartoon. Booker T. Washington says slavery has been a reality everywhere in the world, but that America was one of the first places on earth to outlaw slavery. Not true. And future generations are never responsible for the sins of the past. Now, I will agree with that one. Because, I mean, it depends what you consider responsible. Because if you're talking reparations, well, obviously, we have to help those who were seriously fucked be able to get to the point where they can compete. Because let's face it, a lot of white people can do the things that they do and can do the things that they do, are in the positions that they are in because of the color of their skin. And the fact that blacks were kept down for so long that they just do not have that advantage. So, in that regard, we do have a responsibility to make up for that deficiency by, not just slavery, but what about the I'm trying to think where Black Wall Street was. I'm blanking. That there were successful black people, but white people decided that's not acceptable. So they destroyed whatever wealth blacks accumulated to keep them down. Obviously, we need to do something to ensure that blacks aren't left behind. That we need to do something to help natives who were treated like absolute crap and were left as fodder. Same with blacks. So, in that regard, but to accuse someone just because they're white of being slavers, obviously that's ridiculous. So, it depends what you mean by responsibility, and I'm pretty sure this one means reparations. I mean, blacks tried to play by the rules, and white people decided, oh yeah, we're just going to hinder you at every fucking turn so you can't actually get ahead. So you're going to constantly be in poverty, and, the superior race gets to continue to walk all over you. It's just, yeah. Yeah, I highly doubt Booker T. Washington would say anything of the sort. In another clip they found concerning, an animated Christopher Columbus says the place he discovered wasn't exactly a paradise of civilization, and the native people were far from peaceful. Right, because Christianity didn't exist in the New World until it was forced on them, so obviously not civilized. This Columbus adds some tribes were vicious, warring cannibals, that being taken as a slave is better than being killed, no? And that while he's glad the perspective has changed in the future, to judge me by your standards from the 21st century is estupido. Now, granted, I do agree that we should not judge historical figures by the standards of today. Unless you're talking about the founding fathers who held slaves and were like, in the future, people really should get rid of the slavery thing, but yet they held slaves. That I could see as being problematic. If Christopher Columbus, we have nothing that suggests that he wasn't a horrible person. So, of course, he's not going to have a problem with slavery and assume that natives were violent people because, well, they tried to take advantage of the natives. The natives were like, fuck this, and attacked. I mean, they were just protecting themselves. So, yeah. And just this idea that they didn't have civilization, I mean, we know that's code for Christianity. Because there were literal books about taking the savage out of the natives, taking the savage out of the Indian, which was code for forcing Christianity on them. It literally said that. So, the extent to which teachers are actually using the material is unclear. When a Fox affiliate in Oklahoma City reached out to school districts in the state, they generally responded that they were not. In New Hampshire, an education department spokesperson told THR that 19 students had completed PragerU's financial literacy course and received certificates, and 43 were enrolled. The state has about 54,000 public school, high school students. Stride says she doesn't have numbers. Oh my God. Stride says she doesn't have numbers on how many teachers are using the content. And that as a freedom junkie, she doesn't want to be hovering over people. I don't think Scholastic tracks every parent and teacher that uses their product. But that doesn't mean that Scholastic is not in the classrooms. Okay, that's fair. On a Tuesday morning in November, exactly a week after the presidential election, and a couple of weeks after speaking with THR, Dennis Prager fell at his home and was rushed to the hospital. Doctors determined he had injured his spinal cord, impairing his breathing. The Cedars-Sinai Intensive Care Unit placed him on a ventilator. It was possible he would never walk again, just as PragerU's influence seemed bigger than ever. For months, PragerU has released health updates, including one in February, to say that Prager was talking and eating but couldn't move from the shoulders down. In a March video update, his son, David Prager, the organization's chief development officer, shared a voice recording from his father that said, "I intend to go back on the radio." Soon after, Salem announced he would be back on air in June, though the company said it had given his old time slot to Charlie Kirk, the past PragerU presenter who has become a leading MAGA world personality. Then there was a setback. In May, PragerU said Prager had made it home but caught pneumonia and returned to the hospital. That was a serious step back, Estrin said in an update, while adding that Prager was again on the path to recovery. Salem delayed his return date and has not given a new one. If Prager returns, he'll do so in an environment that looks different from the one he left in November. One that's arguably more favorable to his cause, but also more crowded than ever. His son said in a March health update that it was not time for complacency. "People think we're entering this golden age of conservatism," he said. "If you don't keep fighting when it's the golden ages, it will come back to the dark ages." All right, so that is all I have for that article. So yeah, we are really up against the right-wing media sphere because they are just really a lot better at delivering their ideas than the left wing, which I do not understand why. I really do not understand it. I mean, are we just too timid? I know that there is progressive media out there, but for some reason, it's not gaining the traction that the right-wingers are. And all I can think of is that maybe humans just like being scared. They don't want to be told that that the people you fear or the situations you fear aren't actually scary. That this is why they're not scary. For some reason, people don't like thinking, and they just want to, I don't know, just, have this shallow idea that will make them feel good, rather than, I don't know, use the brain they were born with. So anyway, that is the end of that article, which went on a lot longer than I expected. So now let's get to the second article, like I said, from NBC News. U.S. citizen with real ID handcuffed and held in immigration raid before being released. The man told Noticias Telemundo that authorities took his ID from his wallet and told him it was fake before handcuffing him. I mean, can you scream racist any louder? Because I assure you they would not be doing that to a white person. They would not be saying that their real ID must be fake. I mean, what was their reason for saying it was fake? Probably because the person's brown. A U.S.-born citizen who was wrestled into the dirt, handcuffed and detained in a vehicle as part of an immigration raid had a real ID on him that was dismissed as fake, the man's cousin said Friday. Video of the arrest, aired by Noticias Telemundo, showed authorities grabbing Leonardo Garcia Venegas, 25, while at a job site in Foley, Alabama, on Wednesday and bending his arms behind him. Someone off camera can be heard yelling, "He's a citizen." Garcia told Noticias Telemundo that authorities took his ID from his wallet and told him it was fake before handcuffing him. Real ID is identification U.S. citizens are required by law to have in order to travel through airports and enter federal buildings. It is considered a higher security form of identification, which is why they've been harping it for years for people to get a real ID. And now someone gets a real ID and it's fake? Seriously, the whole point of the real ID is that you don't fake it. What the hell? Apparently, a real ID is not valid anymore. He has a real ID. His cousin, Shayla Venegas, said, "We will make sure we have the real ID," and went through the protocols the administration is asking for. He has his real ID, and then they see him, and I guess because his English isn't fluent or because he's brown, it's fake, it's not real. Which makes you wonder how in the world it can a US born citizen not have good English, but I've met plenty of Americans where I want to cry as to how bad their English actually is. So, Garcia told Noticias Telemundo that they grabbed me real bad and the handcuffs placed very hard on him. Garcia said he was released from the vehicle where he was held after he gave the arresting officials his social security number, which showed he is a U.S. citizen. What? That wasn't fake either? Seriously, if you're going to claim his real ID is fake, I'm surprised that they went with his social security number. Did they actually look it up and realize, oh shit, he really is a citizen? Did they actually do their due diligence at some point? The arrest has left Garcia, who was born in Florida, shaken. I just find it hilarious that he has bad English and he's from Florida. That doesn't say a lot about the education system in Florida. But like I said, I've met plenty of English speakers from around the country who don't necessarily speak English well. Okay, the arrest has left Garcia, who was born in Florida, shaken, particularly because the officers also arrested and detained his brother, who is not in the country legally. Venegas said. She added that Garcia lives with his brother. Their parents are from Mexico, which makes me wonder. I assume that this is an older brother? That he was already born when they moved to the U.S.? Because that's the only thing that literally makes any sense. He was actually pretty sore when he got back, Venegas said of Garcia. He said his arms were hurting and his hands. His wrists, you could see where he had all the marks from the handcuffs. The way they put him on the ground, his knees also were hurting. She said they had been trying to find a lawyer, but local ones have told them that it is nearly impossible to sue a federal agent. So, it is not clear from the video whether the authorities were federal immigration agents or local law enforcement carrying out enforcement duties. Which is why you allow the lawsuit to continue. The worst that'll happen is nothing. I mean, what is with these lawyers and being like, yeah, we're not going to fight this administration. They can do whatever the fuck they want. Guys, that is your damn job to hold up the law. Why is this hard? The Department of Homeland Security said in a statement to NBC News that Garcia interfered with an arrest during a targeted worksite operation. They've lied so much, I do not believe a word that comes out of their mouths. He physically got in between agents and the subject they were attempting to arrest and refused to comply with numerous verbal commands, said Tricia McLaughlin, DHS Assistant Secretary, who has never lied before in her entire life. Anyone who actively obstructs law enforcement in the performance of their sworn duties, including U.S. citizens, will of course face consequences, which includes arrest. This is the same woman who lied about what happened at the New Jersey ICE detention facility when the Newark mayor was arrested briefly. And now charges are supposedly being brought against a congresswoman from New Jersey. I totally believe what she says. The response did not address the dismissal of Garcia's identification. Garcia denied that he was interrupting an arrest. He told NBC News that he was trying to take out his phone when an Immigration and Customs Enforcement agent took it and threw it to the ground, and then an agent began grabbing him. Venegas said Garcia's brother has signed deportation papers because the family didn't want him detained forever, as they've seen happen to another family member who was held for months in a Louisiana detention center. It's inhumane what they're doing to our people. They're treating them as if they were murderers, she said, because they probably think that they are, because racism. Venegas said the immigration arrests are creating repercussions among Hispanics, even among U.S. citizens. It's about race now. It's not about whether you are here legally or not, she said. Her family owns a fairly large contracting company, she said, and a lot of the people that work with us are not working. They're refusing to go to work. They said they are not going to go until this stuff calms down. So you're not going to work until 2028? I don't think that's going to help you any. Venegas added that the majority of her family is self-employed, and we do the same thing every other citizen does. It's just insane we can't be different, the color that we are. We contribute to this country the same way every other citizen does with their taxes, she said. But we have to be the ones that every time we go to work, we're going to be scared that we're going to get discriminated. I think about my family, she said. Even though a lot of them are citizens, I think about how we all work in the same area in construction and that they can't sit out there because they could literally get harassed or attacked the way my cousin did. So, yeah, that's just awesome. So that is all I have for that article, and that's all I have for this video. So with that, I will see you guys in the next one.